Hello, hello, my friends, and welcome to the DogCo Secrets podcast. My name is Michelle Kline. I am your host of the event of this episode, and I am also the founder of DogCo Launch, where I help pet care companies grow and scale. So by the time this episode drops, we will be about 2 weeks into July. So I am doing a mid-year check-in on my own business. I have been spending the week diving into my metrics. I have been spending the week kind of outlining and just taking a look at how have things gone so far this year? What improvements are still yet to be made? And so today I am just going to peel that curtain back and talk to you candidly about how my year is going so far. So let's get into it. All right, so this episode is going to be a little bit more on the vulnerable/personal side of just, I connect with you guys every week, whether it's on this podcast or as a client, and just wanted to take some time to share with you how this year has been going, some goals that I set. We are somehow halfway through the year, and one thing I've shared with my clients recently as I've been doing all this reflection, something about 6-month windows of time just feel easier to me to see impact inside of. Sometimes a year, it just feels so big. It's like, man, I don't know how to drill that down into really specific things. So I'm going to talk about these 3 goals and how things have been going so far in these categories and go from there. So yeah, we'll see where we end up because this is just a little bit more of me talking out loud. So here we go. So, okay, I said I had 3 goals for this year, and the first one was personal savings. So wanting to make sure that I am staying on track for our personal savings. I set a very specific target for this year, and I would rate myself like a 6 out of 10 on this one right now. Actually, would that even be the right number? Here's the thing. The summit has felt like this, the DogCo Business Summit. So if you're brand new to this podcast, you're going to get to know me real well this episode, but the DogCo Business Summit is my first ever in-person conference. So it's a little unclear right now, just since it is so new and it is a big expense. It's a little unclear right now if my savings are truly savings. So if you're planning on buying a DogCo ticket, just go ahead and do that. So then I know. I'm kind of kidding. I'm kind of not kidding. But yeah, so we'll see where that shakes up. I'm really happy with it overall. My biggest takeaway actually, like, joking aside, I'm a big fan of profit first, and I think it would be wiser for me to switch my mindset from trying to hit a certain number to tracking and saving per percentage. That's how I did it in my pet care business, and I don't think I should have moved away from it because I think that actually is a better indication of just health and priorities in my business is if there are percentage allocations rather than a very specific number, just because the summit is kind of a different, it's just there are so many unknowns that it just feels hard to really wrap my head around it, and I think it will until I'm through the first one. I plan to be a pro at this by next year, which we already have dates for 2026, so yes, we're doing this again. So clearly it hasn't been that bad. But that's where I would rate that first category. Maybe drawing that, I wasn't really planning to do this, but I think it could be helpful for people. Maybe drawing that into some applicable takeaways for the audience if you feel you are just a little unsure. Maybe you're having a weird year numerically. It's like there's growth and it's awesome, but at the same time, it's like hard to get clarity. I would encourage you to do something very similar to what I just did, which is to figure out, is there a metric I can track if the one that I was looking at just doesn't make sense for how the year is going? So for example, I've been tracking savings and been tracking like money flow, and it's just a weird year. I'm having to do my P&L in different ways because of the way that like expenses for the summit are kind of allocating per quarter. That's been new for me. I've always been like really good at reading and or not always, but I've worked hard to get really good at reading and understanding my P&L. I feel like I'm having to relearn it in some ways. If you're a pet care business that wants to level up, then this is for you. The DogCo Business Summit is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, September 26th to the 28th. We still have tickets available, and we just announced that we are going digital. So you can get your in-person ticket or your digital ticket at dogcosummit.com. So yeah, so if you're in a similar year where it's like, oh, maybe I've taken on a new initiative, I've taken on a new business, I've taken on just something that is new and it's either affecting cash flow or savings, not even poorly. Just so everybody's clear, the summit's going to be amazing. It is still happening. Cash flow is totally fine. It's just a new financial investment. And so if you're in a similar place, I think looking at how am I tracking this can be a helpful measurement because we want to make sure that we have clarity. I think that really is the entire value of tracking and data, is making sure that it gives us clarity in the areas that we are lacking it so that we can make good decisions. And that's what I've come to on this first goal, is that things are going really well, but I'm not tracking it in a way that's given me the clarity that I would like to have. So that's a change I'm going to be making. The second goal I had for this year was around fitness and health, and I'm really happy about how that is going this year. So I've shared pretty openly on the podcast that I made the decision last year to make some pretty big changes when it came to my health. So over the last 10 months, I've just made a lot of changes. I have lost 40 pounds, which I'm really proud of. But I would say the biggest thing I'm proud of is I started working out with a trainer in March, and I've stuck with it. So I weightlift 4 days a week, and I would say out of everything this year, that is the thing I'm most proud of because it's a really high personal priority to me to take care of my physical health. And entrepreneurship can make that really hard. I don't want to make it sound like an excuse, but I had deprioritized my health for about a decade, pretty significantly, and it definitely was catching up to me. I was feeling the wear and tear on that or on my body from those decisions. And so I'm really proud of myself for following through on that. So this is kind of similar to the first goal I was talking about when it comes to just this mid-year check-in. I am going to be shifting what I am tracking and measuring as value and impact here, because for a long time I just wanted to lose weight that I had gained during COVID and to feel better in my body. And now that I have accomplished that, I would really like to shift towards more metrics on building muscle and getting better sleep. So I'm still dialing in how I want to track that. I've gotten onto Whoop with a group of friends, and so that's been great. I feel like I'm getting more into measuring non-weight stats, which I'm excited about. And so I feel really excited for fitness for the rest of the year, while also trying to dial in what is my goal now, because I did hit that initial goal, because my initial goal the first half of the year was to finish losing the weight I wanted to lose. So I know for sure I do plan to measure success just in quantity of workouts right now, of making sure I stay consistent and go actually go to the gym. But I don't think that is the final version of how I want to track that. You're probably sensing a theme. If you want to create impact and change, I'm a big proponent you have to track it. So that is what I'm trying to turn all of my goals into, is ways that are quantifiably measurable. So yeah, so I know I'm going to be tracking sleep stats, and I know I would like to track quantity of workouts. I haven't really figured more deeply than that, because I think there is a measurement of quality of workout and actual impact that would be more helpful. The closest example I'm thinking of is running a mile. That's measurable. It's last year I ran a 9-minute mile, and this year I ran an 8-minute mile. That would be something I could look at quantifiably to say, yes, I have made progress. So we'll see. I could see that being certain weight that I'm able to lift, or maybe I really want to be able to do a pull-up, an unassisted pull-up. So actually maybe that's the goal. Maybe we just discovered that together on this journey, this episode today, which is vastly different than what I normally do. But figured I'd take y'all along with me, because this is what I'm thinking about all week. Okay, so first two goals, savings, fitness, boom. So that's where we are at. Okay, let's talk DogCo, because DogCo was the third category, and that's where I have the most to say. So my goal this year was to, how do I put this? Because I'm going to tease some things for y'all today, because there's a lot coming with DogCo that I'm really excited to bring to you guys, and I can't give it all away on one podcast. So I'll give you some sneak peeks though. So one of the things that was a big priority for me this year was to figure out more of the model of the company that was going to be the vehicle to continue to grow while driving the most amount of impact possible. When I first started DogCo, I did a 12-month mastermind, and that has worked really, really beautifully. Trying to figure out how to dance around too much, or dance around without giving too much. But that model also has really limited how many companies I can work with. It's limited. It puts me on, this is just a very candid reflection, it puts me on like a time clock of not working with companies anymore because it's so time-based. And I learned some lessons from that. I had so many companies graduate earlier this year where it was like, wait, we're just getting started together, and you're feeling it and I'm feeling it, but that isn't how I set this up. And so I have known all year that I have wanted to make some changes, more to come, that I really believe are going to serve clients better and serve the industry better, and also are going to be a business that I see myself just loving continuing to grow. So that has been the last 6 months, is really visioning what that's going to look like, what those changes are. Again, all in service of serving more, because I love what I do. And one thing I keep coming back to is, if we're looking at measuring success, if we're looking at measuring what thing I do based off of, like, how do we measure it? Impact to companies is the forefront. I haven't really landed on core values for DogCo yet, but I know impact and driving value that generates impact is a huge one for me. And I want that to be at the heart of everything that I do. And so, I really want to align the model to measuring and achieving impact for my clients. And so that's the precipice of some of the changes, is figuring out how to do that better in ways that maybe don't time constrict companies the way that I have before. Okay, so that was my high level goal for DogCo this year. I know it's a little vague, but sometimes goals are vague, but I wanted to spend the year really figuring out the vehicle that DogCo needs to be to drive the most impact in the industry. That is so much better said. You can skip the last 2 minutes, just that one. So taking a look at the last 6 months, because we do this, I think, as business owners, where we're like, I've achieved nothing. And then we take a step back and we're like, okay, maybe some might say that this has been a pretty impactful 6 months. And that's the experience that I've had this week. So objectively, things that I'm just so excited about, proud about, hype about, all the things from this year so far. The first would be launching a graduate level program off of the mastermind. So I am now in a second year engagement with a lot of companies that I already have worked with, and we're getting to go deeper into their businesses to focus on driving more impact. That's been really meaningful for me. It's really validated that I don't want a business model built on only 12-month cycles with clients. I want a business model that lets me really stay in relationship for a continued amount of time with companies for as long as it serves them and what they are looking to do. So that's been really affirming to continue on so many of these relationships, and to start to get to experiment, what drives this impact, what drives this value. So there's been a lot of testing, working on getting a lot of feedback to make sure that really is meeting a need. The second thing that I'm really proud of so far this year is the summit and the way that that is shaping up, and just the encouragement and energy and excitement. We have the right people connected to this project, and I don't know, it's just, I'm really excited. I was telling my good friend Doug Keeling, we were talking yesterday, that if nothing else, I feel like I've kind of built my dream speaker lineup for my own education. I can't wait to learn personally. But I feel like that's a really good indicator that this is going to be something special. And I'm just really proud of taking the risk to do it because and to be honest, I'm not sure I really knew how big it was before I committed to it, which is very characteristic of me. But it's big and it's risky, and I'm just really excited, and I'm really proud of DogCo taking that on. I'm proud of like the people working on this initiative together. I think it's going to be really special. So I'm really proud of that. And the way it's coming together, it's going to be here so soon. It's going to be here so soon. I'm really proud of the podcast launch. I'm not going to lie, I was not sold on doing a podcast. I've wanted to for a long time, and I kept waiting for the timing to be better, and it just never has been, like in the last 6 years, because I've kicked around, different ideas for quite a while. And I finally had a moment this spring where I was like, I just think that probably similar to starting a business or having a kid, there just isn't a good time. So I just need to do it. So launching this spring, I will say my expectations were really, really low. And this has become one of my favorite things that I do. And that was really surprising to me. I thought this might be something that I have to grind at for a year before I really enjoyed it, because it's making content and that can feel kind of draining. And for me, this has been really energizing. It's been something I've really enjoyed. And that to me has been really, really neat, because I'm decently good at doing things I don't enjoy. I force myself to do it because that is sometimes what business requires. But it's been really wonderful for this to just feel fun and to see it driving impact and value into my business and hopefully into clients, in different episodes and how they resonate with people. So that's been a really, really fun piece of this year so far. The start of the year was the biggest cohort kind of group launch I have ever done. So that was just an exciting milestone for DogCo, milestone for me. 2 more things that were on my list of my proud moments for the year so far. Bringing together the people who are on the team right now. So DogCo has 1 full-time employee, my amazing administrative assistant, Albany, and then I have 3 other people who are part-time helping facilitate different aspects of what we do. And I had a bit of a rough start with hiring last year for DogCo, and so having the right people on the boat this time around and just developing out what it's like to work together and what we're all doing and how that works and how, we're driving things forward together. It's been really, really wonderful. I think I've shared on here, if not, I'm about to, that for a long time, I really thought DogCo might be something that I was just going to do as a solo venture. And I'm really glad I've stepped into building a team because I think that is something I really enjoy, and I really enjoy working with people and being aligned on a mission together. And so I just love that is coming together for DogCo this year. And in some ways a lot more quickly than I expected, which has been really, really neat to see. And then along that line, so the final thing that I think has been really neat, at the start of this year, I have a property in my neighborhood that I previously was using as an Airbnb that I actually took offline and decided to make the investment to convert that into a DogCo headquarters. That's been really neat. At the time, it felt like, man, maybe this is too big of an investment in some ways, or do we really need that much space? There's no reason that we couldn't work remotely and do everything over Zoom. It's been such an amazing decision. Something about having a space for the business, I think, has just solidified and structured in a way that I didn't, as I'm tossing the microphone around, that I didn't expect. And that's been really neat. I think it's allowed a lot more kind of team building and cohesion across DogCo really early, which I'm really, really thankful for. Okay, now I want to talk about the hard lessons I've learned so far this year, because there also have been those. So first things first, earlier this year, I was offering a service that was very time intensive. that I also happen to love. It was my service where people could come to Winston and work in person with me for 2 days on their business. And last year, when I had less clients, I committed to a lot of those engagements for the first 4 months of this year. And then I launched a very large group of companies in January and realized my time was very constricted. We made it work, but I did have to discontinue that service line once I had gotten through the commitments that I had made. And it was paired with, I had committed to a decent amount of travel in the spring. And so I do think I learned some harder lessons earlier this year, just about time and commitment and, making sure my attention doesn't get fragmented, that I'm thankful for. And I'm thankful the last 2 months I've been able to be home and kind of reestablish. I haven't traveled in quite a while. And I also did discontinue, for now at least, this service so that I could focus on making sure my programs and the companies that I work with on a recurring basis are getting what they need. And that was absolutely the right call for the company. I think in hindsight, I would have done better planning for how this service was going to intersect into the volume that I was doing with my new programs. And part of that was just an unknown, so I need to be nice to myself about it. I didn't know I was going to be launching these graduate programs. When I committed to these on-sites, I didn't know about I didn't even know about the summit or the podcast because I had made these commitments pretty far in advance. So, I think that maybe is a lesson in pivoting once you realize what's happened, which I'm really thankful I did do. But yeah, it was a harder lesson. There was about a 6 to 8 week window between mid-February and the beginning of April where I was on a full-on sprint about 14 hours a day. And that was a window. It was a season I was willing to do, but you can't be at your best when you're running that hard, that consistently. And so I'm really thankful that, I've been able to take a step back and kind of regroup and make sure my time's going where it needs to. And I feel much more in alignment now. And it is something that I'm looking at for the fall to make sure that doesn't happen again. So I have not brought back the on-sites. I won't be doing that. But I do have a decent amount of travel, so making sure that I'm better at planning ahead. I'm better about asking for help from my admin and equipping her too. So that's kind of a lesson that I'll be pushing forward into the future. Another hard lesson from this year. I maybe named this category wrong. Just things that I'm mulling on for change, because none of these are painfully bad things, but kind of related to the time piece. I want to be better about protecting windows of time for ingesting, tracking, measuring, and forming around my teaching to make sure that I am really driving as much impact as I can in the most targeted ways possible. I think the last thing people need is more fluff or more inaction. So I really want to make sure that I am driving the most actionable, valuable content that I can be. And I think I've reached this point since I have been teaching content and working with companies for almost 3 years now. I've reached a point, 2.5-ish, where I've gotten a lot more data and a lot more insight. And I want to figure out how to continue going while also incorporating more of that to make sure that I'm really bringing the best that I possibly can into the industry. And I think some of that is just making sure I have enough time to do so. I have open windows of time where I can reflect, I can write, I can look at data, I can pull data together. So that's going to be a priority for me going into the end of this year. And I think I have a gut hunch that's going to be a lot of 2026 for me, is really elevating the material I'm bringing, because I do have clarity now on the vehicle. I can't give away all of that. The vehicle is in what I'm calling it version 2 of DogCo. Version 2 of DogCo will be launching after the summit, so you're going to have to wait and hear more about it then. But, now that I know more of what that looks like, I think next year is going to be figuring out more of how can I really pull everything I've learned together to make sure it is the most valuable delivery that I can do. So more to come there. And then final lesson from this spring is that my Facebook group, my free Facebook group, really got deprioritized with the level of activity that I've had going on. And I don't want that. There's an argument that when I get busy shouldn't be my core focus. And it won't be able to be my core focus. But I do want that to be a resource to the industry. I want companies that either can't afford my services or aren't ready to invest to still have access to things that are going to help them and to build community. Like I think this Facebook group was such a valuable asset to the start of DogCo because it really let people connect. And I want to find ways to keep that going even when it can't be my first priority, because when DogCo was much smaller, it was just a different group, and I still want it to be just as valuable, knowing that I don't have as much time to put into it as I used to. So I'm thinking through those things. All right, so how I plan to measure success moving forward for the rest of this year. So bringing this back into the metrics, into the data, into just how are we measuring this? So number one, impact to companies. I want to define out more. The 3 measures of impact that I historically have tracked have been impact to top line revenue, impact to net profit, and impact to time off. I like those 3 measurements, I think. I want to validate that those are the right things I should be measuring. And I want to get systems in place to actually measure that on a more repeated basis. I don't feel like I've really cracked the system for how I am receiving and asking for data from the companies I work with on a regular basis. Obviously anonymous, in a very protected way, but, helping define more of what these benchmarks should be based off of the data I have access to. So that is something I'll be looking at. And then as far as things that I will be measuring for the success and health of DogCo, there are 4 things. Number one, always, always, always client retention. That is what I care the most about. Number 2, depth of client feedback. Still figuring out how to really quantify that, but I really rely on feedback from the companies that I work with on what works for them, what doesn't. And so I want to make sure I'm still asking for and soliciting really quality feedback, tracking that feedback, implementing feedback. Client engagement. So I've played around with a few different ways to track this, and I'm not fully happy with where I'm at yet. I track attendance for all the calls that I do for the groups. I track weekly engagement. I have kind of a rubric on that, but at the same time, I don't know that that's always an indication of health. There are some companies I don't hear from for a month. And then they kind of swing back into my inbox, or, we get connected on a call and they've been implementing and they've been killing it. And they've just been busy because they're actually taking what I'm teaching and running with it, which is a huge measure of success. So I'm not fully sold on how to do that one yet, but we'll get there. And then new client acquisition with the new DogCo model. Though I will say out of all of these, that is the metric that I'm least focused on right now, because I really want to make sure I have the right vehicle with the right people in it who stay as long as it serves them. And so I'm really trying to stay focused on that and driving impact there. All right, I'm going to wrap up with my hopes for the end of the year. And I would love to say I'd love nothing more than for you to post and tag me in your hopes for this year, because we still have 6 months and you can drive so much impact in your business in 6 months. You can do an industry-wide conference and a podcast and get a headquarters. I don't know. There's so much you can do in 6 months, and it's going to be a really good second half of the year. So hopes for the end of the year. Number 1, killer first conference. I really want this inaugural conference to be special. I want it to be memorable. I want people to leave with this belief in their business, with relationships formed by just being in the room with all these other amazing companies, with tactical things that they can implement off of the content. So killer first conference, bringing on more team members to help grow the DogCo world. So I have a couple new positions that I'm going to be opening up for people to help with some of the changes that are coming at the end of the year. And I'm really excited to get more people just in and working with me and kind of helping build this to be a special thing. Figuring out, so third hope for the year is figuring out how to facilitate relationships for my clients to each other in ways that programmatically make sense. One of my favorite things about DogCo is that people find their people here. There have been a lot of really tight friendships that have formed, and I want to figure out how to facilitate that while also building just the way it's structured, knowing that my first priority has to be to drive business impact. But I think relationships are a huge piece of that. So my hope is I have more clarity on how to continue to enable those relationships in ways that make sense, knowing that people can always connect outside of me as well, but it's something I care about. And then finally, big hope for the year. I know it's vague. I know I've been teasing some things, but really launching the next phase of DogCo and what this company will be successfully. And there are so many different ways to measure that success. I think even just having the courage to try something slightly new, still impactful, slightly new, like that in and of itself, I think I personally categorize as success, but in a way that I think clearly provides more value, more impact to the companies I want to work with. Like that's how I measure success. And so, making sure that that gets rolled out, and also in a way that is just due to my own proclivities to chaos, in a way that is planned and thoughtful and measured, is a big hope of mine. And that's where I plan to put a lot of time, effort, and energy into the rest of this year. So I hope, I don't know what I hope you got out of this episode. Maybe knowing more of me, maybe being inspired for goals you want to set. Whatever it may be, I hope you got something out of this podcast, if nothing more than a half hour of just interesting musings on DogCo and where I hope we head next. So thank you for your time. Please post your hopes for the end of 2025 onto social media. Tag me. I'd love to see it. And I will catch you guys soon.